Hello everyone, are you ready for another adventure? It's me, Wokey, and I'm back with another Fake Grand Order video, and I'm here with a long one today, because today we're going to be talking about the GSSR that is coming to the game on January 1st, 2025, and the reason we know this is because we are 2 years behind on JP, so this is the one that they got for this year, and it's likely we're going to be receiving the same. I'm saying that just in case someone doesn't know, because there are occasionally people who do ask me and say, like, how do you know what's going to happen? Well, it's because we're living in the past. So yeah, that's going to be today's video. Please leave a like to tell me... please leave a like to tell me that you like me. Please leave a comment to tell me which one of these you're kind of planning on summoning for. I've talked about these banners a whole bunch because I've been trying to record a video on them. And the thing that always keeps tripping me up is that I feel like they're very weird and scattershot this year just because of how they broke them down. So I'd be very, very curious to hear which one you're planning to summon on. And if you want to show support, leaving a like and subscribing does help me out. I'm almost at 4,000. If I could get to 4,000 by the end of 2024, I would consider that a Christmas gift to me. Don't think it's going to happen, but it'd be nice if it did. So let's start talking about it and also start with the basic structures of the GSSR. So starting off first, there will be 20 pools, aka 20 banners, which will be divided by class and NP types, and you can only roll a single one of them. Only one time in the game's history have you ever been able to roll in one other, more than one GSSR, and that was a bug. And it was a bug that they said, well, if you were active and paying us money during that period, you can keep the SSRs, but it's closed now, and it's never happened again since. Also, only paid quartz can be used for this, so if you're someone who is free to play, it's probably a better idea to leave the video. Thank you very much for watching. But if you want to stay free to play, it's better to probably not watch an hour-long video where I talk about, man, let's look at all the units and all the potential that you can get in here. And if you're someone who is trying to get this for the cheapest, then you have to buy the $11.99 version, and then I think for the 99-cent one, or one of the pack that is 5 St. Quartz plus 4 St. Quartz and then plus 2 bonus ones. I forget the exact breakdown of it just because I don't buy it very often. And the reason is because it uses premium currency only, and they don't count bonus quartz as... It's very dumb. I don't know why FGO does this. I also don't know why FGO doesn't just give a pack that just gives 15 St. Quartz. It's very dumb that we're this many years in and they don't do that. But anyway, I digress. Also, a Holy Grail will be sent to your present box after you finish rolling on the GSSR. And then that's the basic structure of it. So, the way I'm going to be talking about these banners is not in order. The way I'm going to talk about it is the banner that I think is the best kind of generic banner. The one that I think is likely best if you're just looking for a good unit of some kind and you're not chasing one of the support units. It's also the one I plan to summon on, which is why I'm probably going to be talking about it first. And then the ones I'm going to talk about afterwards are the one that feature the support units. A lot of the times in the GSSR, when I see people go for them, either the way that you summon on the GSSR is either one, you're looking for the unit you want the most, which is a fan favorite of yours or a personal favorite. That's why I've summoned on the GSSR in the past as well. Or you're looking for a top meta unit, or you're someone who's just had the worst luck in their life and you're just looking to have a break. Those are all the reasons I see why someone would summon on the GSSR. In that case, you have to start playing on the numbers games, because the number of SSRs on them and the number of them that are featured are all different. Like, for example, this one's a 1 in 7, this one's a 1 in 6, and this one's a 1 in 3, and they all have different percentages of them, and I will talk about them a little bit more as I talk through the banner. But know that I think the actual right way of summoning on a GSSR is not technically picking the one that I think is the best, but I think it's looking at all the options on the GSSR, weighing them in your head, and saying, what is my percentage of getting something good versus something that I really hate? And then kind of going from there. The best I can do to you is kind of talk about these GSSRs and give my thought process, and then at the end, you get to decide which one it is. But again, the reason I also talk about the first one coming up is because it's the best one, where I think if I looked at it and said, like, I'd be happy to get any one of these, I would be accurate on it, and they would be helpful in my game plan going forward. Okay, with that, hopefully everything out of the... Also, by the way, just the structure I'll say, so that's the first banner, is going to be the one that I think is just the generically best, the supporters, and then I will go over all of them at the end there. When I'm starting to do the quick rush through all of them after I go through the supports, I'm going to be talking very quickly over a lot of these units and maybe giving as much detail as I can, but giving a very broad stroke talk about the specific unit. So if you disagree with something I said, you can feel free to leave a comment and I will look at it and remember it for next time I say it. But do also know that when I'm making my point, give me a little break here, man. I'm trying not to have the video be 5 hours long, and this is the 30th time I've tried to record this damn video, so please give me a break. It's Christmas season, Mr. Scrooge. Don't be mean to me. Alright, we're gonna get on with it. Finally, also feel free to use the timestamps, because the timestamps will be really nice if you just want to see me talk about a very specific banner, which is why I include it. Which is also why everyone skipped to this exact point to not hear me talk about everything at the beginning. Hey, peer person who skips, I appreciate you. So, first banner to talk about is the Berserker AoE Offensive NP. This is the one that I'm going to be summoning on. It's a 1 in 6 chance of getting any one of these units, so the odds of actually trying to get an exact unit you want are not the best, but I also think the unit quality in this one is far and above all the other ones, I think. So, we have Arjuna Alter, Summer Ibuki, Senno Rikyu, Raiko, Summer Musashi, and Morgan. So, obviously, first things first, on the NA side of the game, these three are kind of like the poster child for AoE Berserkers for their respective for their respective cards. Arjuna Alter for Buster, Summer Ibuki for Arts, and Senno Rikyu for Quick. One of the reasons why I had to record this video over and over again is because JP actually most recently released a Quick Berserker that is insanely good, so I had to change some of the wording that I said for Senno Rikyu so I can say specifically on NA currently, and at least not for another 2 years. Because Louis is looking really good and looks amazing based off of her kit. It seems kind of insane that they just released that and said this is a permanent unit. If it wasn't for the weird glitches going on, I feel like a lot more people would be talking about Louis, but unfortunately there's a big St. Quartz glitch currently going on in JP that is insane. Shouldn't spend too much time talking about it here, but feel free to tell me how you feel about Tattoo if you already decided on your GSSR. So anyway, those are the units on him. So I think Arjuna Alter, absolutely one of the strongest in terms of... I think someone actually noticed he's one of the units that has gone the longest without actually receiving any kind of a strengthening, because he's just that insanely built. The other unit that's on... There's actually 2 other Buster Berserkers on here that I feel like also, if you get them, you'll still be pretty happy about it. At least I would be. Let me... I guess make that caveat, which is obviously why I'm summoning on this. Morgan is also a Buster AoE, but she's different from Arjuna Alter. She can't really compete with him in terms of damage unless you are crazy supporting her. Like, obviously, you have an MP2 Morgan, then yes, obviously, you're going to be probably doing more damage than a base-leveled NP1 Arjuna Alter. But she also has a lot of other things to her that make her just as good, like the ability to have a multi-core kind of focused team, which lets you not what's the word for it? Grind without looping. It's kind of just using a bunch of units that are just really good at buffing the entire team and also shooting off their NP, like the most recent Quick Berserker on JP that I mentioned, Louis. She can be really good at that, and then she can also be pretty nice in certain challenge quests, because this ability of hers right here can also reduce enemies' attack and critical attack chance while giving you crit stars, and also giving her a little bit of a self-regeneration buff, while doing a bunch of other really nice things for her. So Morgan is a really nice all-arounder that's also as good. I remember when she first released, it was actually a slow creep up, and I believe the people on JP for a while liked using Morgan more than Arjuna Alter just because of how much more versatility she could be using throughout many other things. Depending on where you fall on that stance, I think either way, having either one of them is fantastic. And then Raiko, a lot of people would probably think that it's kind of a bad pull, but I think eventually... if you're good with waiting, which is something that is also a little bit of a habit with Musashi, and also a lot of other servants that I'm going to mention kind of suffer from this. It ends up being less offensive to me, but I know I've had other people say, like, yeah, that's nice that eventually they get it, but I kind of want them to be good now. So that's why I bring it up. But on the anniversary this year, for us, Raiko will be getting this strengthening, which will finally let her to be able to loop. And she ends up coming back and being one of the best loopers that you can have for Berserker as well. I think I remember when this came out, someone saying that it's actually possible to get Raiko at NP level 1 and Arjuna Alter on NP level 1 in certain cases for her to be able to outdamage him. I don't remember if that person... I remember them showing me math. I think it had to do with this specifically, where if you were fighting against a demonic enemy, and then also if you were fighting someone who is a servant with Earth or Sky, it was then possible to actually outdamage him if you had these specific, like, stuff up. Because the cooldown, she'd be able to get this back in time, so she'd be able to have a big bonus damage if you were fighting against these specific parameters in that case. So I think a really good pull. Summer Musashi kind of suffers from the fact that Summer Ibuki exists. Summer Ibuki is, without a doubt, the best AoE looper for Arts. Just absolutely godsend. I most recently used her to completely wipe the floor with all the Lost Belt 6 fights. I'm like, oh my god, my life would have been so much easier with you if I had you while I was grinding Lost Belt 6 when it originally came out. Not even originally, I did a little bit of a catch-up. So yeah, Musashi kind of suffers from that, and plus she has also been power crept a lot in the skill department, where she needs a little bit of help with that. But what they did do is give her an insane NP buff, where she deals 200% extra damage against Saber class enemies, and also seals their NPs for a single turn. Absolutely insane. It makes her, I think, one of the best units to fight a Saber servant. Even with her class being Berserker, she at least does have a little bit form of defense of giving herself a gut status, even though this also does some damage. Like I said, she could probably still use a little bit more buffs, but it is really nice that they also made her just an absolutely insane Saber killer. Something that also, because there's no way for them to buff her, and for her to be, like, on par with Summer Ibuki at the moment. So what they did was a much smarter thing, where they said, what if we just made her have such a crazy bonus against Sabers that it doesn't matter? And I think that's really cool. So I think she's also a really good unit to pull. And also there's Senno Rikyu. Like I said, even though JP on their side has a new Quick Berserker, which, because the info is so new, I'm not really confident in saying anything else other than I read that kit and said, that seems really fucking insane. Senno Rikyu is still, for all intents and purposes, for at least 2 years, still the go-to Quick Berserker that you could see here. Plus, I believe that even though the new one, Louis, is a little bit better in multi-core farming, Senno Rikyu is still no pushover in what she does. Really, really, really good unit. So in my eyes, this one is a 1 in 6. The one unit that I want on here that I don't already have is Senno Rikyu, and then the other ones, all they give to me is a bonus in NP. And I'll be happy with getting that because all of these are DPS focused. So that means if I get an NP2 Arjuna Alter, an NP6 Ibuki Doji, an NP2 Raiko, an NP2 Musashi, an NP2 Morgan, I'm going to be pretty happy because all it means is that they're going to be doing more damage, and it opens up the ability of maybe using a little bit more of the append skills. And in Summer Ibuki's case, unlocking level 120 plus all 3 append skills, which is nice. So that's what I mean when I say, like, if you fail, if you're looking at this and you're going, I want Arjuna Alter, and then you fail to get him, and then you get one of these, I still think you're going to be pretty happy. Because you're going to get a really good unit, and you say, like, well, I wasn't really focused on quick, but if I'm ever able to pull Summer Scotty, I automatically have the Berserker that can be used alongside her. The same thing goes for Ibuki, and going like, well, I can put her up with Zufu and get a friend, Castoria and start looping immediately because just how stupid she is. And the others, I think, are also, for various reasons that I've already mentioned, very good. It makes the cushion the fall when you miss that much higher. I guess I'll say in terms of the actual negatives on this banner, just because I'm thinking for me, like, there are no negatives for me because I'm someone who can wait, and I love every single one of these units, or like them to some extent. Like, I really liked Rikyu in that story, and I really like Arjuna Alter, and I do love my girls right here. But some negatives are obvious in that if you don't want to wait for the Raiko buff, and you don't want to wait for the Musashi buff, because again, Raiko comes up for the anniversary, which is like 6 months away. And for Summer Musashi, it's a year away because we have to wait for the Fate Samurai collab, which is a year from now. So it's in 2026. That's what I mean where I say, like, some players are just like, man, I don't even know what the hell I'm going to be doing in 2026. How do I know that I'm even still playing the game? How do I know that the game hasn't shut down by then, huh? That's a good question. I don't know. I don't think that far ahead. I just go like, I know when this year comes, I'm getting my stuff. And if something has happened to me or to the game, that's a bummer. I'm going to have to rebrand absolutely everything. There's nothing else. So there's Berserker AoE Offensive NP. Let's talk about the other banners which feature the support units on it. We're going to start with Castoria because I believe she's the first one that pops up. Yep, that's correct. I'm going to go in the order of Castoria, Koyan, Summer Scotty, Oberon, and then talk about Reigns, and then funny enough, Van Gogh and Lady Avalon, just because they just so happen to both be on the same ones, and Van Gogh is a form of a support servant. That's the way I would do it, just because I'll go by the main ones and then the secondary ones, and there you go. So, and thankfully, some of the secondary ones are also on Castoria's banner. So, we have Castoria's banner, which is the caster single target offensive and support NPs, because they couldn't put the 2 single target offensive casters in a banner by themselves, just chilling and hanging out. So they put them with the one with Castoria. So this banner features Castoria, it features Okoni, it features Ilya, it features Scotty, it features Merlin, and it features Miss Crane. So if you're looking specifically for Castoria, because either you missed getting her when her banner was up here, or you just really want her because you have whatever reasons for wanting her, it's a 1 in 6, so your chances are about 16%, taking away the little decimal point stuff that comes afterwards. And just using a very broad 16%. Okay, so not the worst of odds, for sure. The worst of odds on here is actually, funny enough, 14% on the Saber banner, because it has 7. But 16%, you kind of look at that and you go like, well, 16% of getting Castoria is technically higher chances of getting a Castoria than you would on summoning on a Castoria-focused banner with a single multi. Think of it like that. Like, the odds are still not good, but it's still better than the odds of you doing anything else. So how bad is it if you actually fail to get Castoria, or maybe you're looking for one of the other units? Well, Okoni and Ilya, I think, are the next ones I'll talk about, because I think they both fit in the same category of they're both really solid single-target casters, with the main issue with them actually being is that a lot of players just don't see a need for a single-target caster. I'm not one of them. I love single-target casters. When I can use my Songzong, I bust her out and immediately go like, oh yeah, my girl comes back for her glory. I'm ready for it. Same thing goes for Ilya, because I actually do have Ilya, and sometimes I'm like, you know what? Let me bring out Ilya. Let me get her in the mix, try and get it in here. But a lot of players also just don't see a need for them, just because they're just like, you know what? I'll just use a single target Berserker, and they'll do type effective damage, and they'll also hit harder because they're not getting hit with damage penalties of some kind because of their class. And I'm like, yeah, that's true, but I do like that a single target focused caster would be able to take less damage from an assassin, and you know, I like having them for that reason. But again, it's a personal player thing, so if you consider them in terms of, oh man, I would hate to get these two while I'm going for Castoria, just know that's, I believe, a 32% chance of getting completely destroyed by him. It's like, oh yeah, that's a high percentage of getting either one of these two single target casters. But let's move on to the other ones, which is Scotty, Merlin, and Miss Crane. All three of them are the other support units on here. Obviously, Scotty is no longer the main driving force for Quick, but that does not mean that you can't use her alongside Summer Scotty and still find good results. You'll do less damage, and in some cases, there will be some units who are like, I really did need that extra damage from the secondary skill that Summer Scotty brings in. But the nice thing about Summer Scotty, and when she's being used with regular Scotty, is that Summer Scotty buffs the crit damage of Buster cards, while regular Scotty buffs it of Quick cards. So if you do want to still deal an even amount of damage between Quick and Buster damage, then you kind of have to go with a regular Scotty on the team somewhere. Merlin is obviously no longer the poster boy for Buster. Bless you, boy. He's no longer the main driving force for Buster like he was back in the old days when he completely changed the game. They're likely afraid of ever making him back to that form of glory, but it's okay because he has a new role of just being the guy you go to whenever you want to do some Buster stuff, crit-wise on Buster. And plus, he's a lot more defensive focused than Koyanskaya, so I actually prefer to have Merlin in a challenge quest for that reason. He's much more reliable, and he also can be fit into a lot of teams that are known as the Undying. I believe he was a part of that team that lasted like 4,000 turns, and then the JP devs looked at that and said, yeah, we're killing this team. We're making it so you can't do it on this fight anymore. You were not supposed to be able to do that, and we're stopping that. And then Miss Crane, I think, is also a really neat support servant that I think a lot of newer players sometimes don't see how to use. She has the ability to kind of swap out and give herself 100% NP while giving herself and the party some other like neat little stuff here, like having the ability to increase their NP damage for just a bit, and then she kind of goes off. Increasing their attack as well, and then also charging the first ally's NP gauge except for self, and then kind of leaving. I think she's a very neat support servant that is fun to use and mess around with, but I can also see a lot of newer players kind of going like, I'm trying to put Miss Crane in my combos, and I'm not really doing the best job of like fully understanding. I definitely feel like it's better for one of those people who are like, I know a little bit more into the game and I'm doing a little bit more stuff. And I think she's cool for that reason, but I can understand some people being a little confused. Plus, it's also nice to have a unit that can just grant instant kill immunity, because there are occasionally challenge quests where you'll run into a fight that just says, I will instantly kill you, and it's nice to have a unit that will say, actually, how about I just negate your ability to do that for at least 3 turns, and then we'll see how we feel at the end of those 3 turns. So, these are all 3 great support casters, but the problem with them is that once you have a single copy of them, it gets a little bit of a diminishing returns. Like, for example, I never try and summon with a banner, a GSSR that features Scotty. The reason being is that I really don't want NP2 Scotty. It's not something I'm really looking forward to. She does get better. She does get better with an NP2, but it's not also one of the things where I'm like, I need to desperately get NP2 Scotty, because it's not like it's a make or break type of thing. Same thing kind of goes for Merlin and Miss Crane. Funny enough, it doesn't really apply to Castoria, because at least in MP2, what it unlocks for you is the ability of Overcharge. And because Castoria has this little ability here, you actually anti-purge defense, it's really nice to be able to get a charge 2 and be able to get like 2 anti-purge defense stacks and kind of let you build it up and then have more mess around with Overcharge. But yeah, like I was saying back, an NP2 of Merlin or Miss Crane or Scotty kind of hurts in some kind of ways. I've actually seen my brother pull an NP2 Merlin, and he has a definite... I remember that video because I was laughing, and he had a reaction of, this is a really good pull, but man, it could have been something else. And that's maybe the worst feeling that you can have on GSSR, is when you pull a good unit, and then you're just like, I really didn't want you at NP2. You really... are not, it's a feel bad moment, because you can never really truly complain, because people will see you pull them and go like, that's a good pull. He's like, no, oh man, I already had them. It's NP2, man, you wouldn't understand. It's like, okay. You'll get no sympathy from anyone. So yeah, this banner kind of fluctuates about how much it's worth it for you to go for. I think if you're missing 4 of these support servants, and if you're okay on Akoni and Ilya, I think it's definitely worth it to try and risk it for Castoria. At best, you'll get Castoria, and at worst, you'll likely either get an NP2 or a single target caster, which again, player preference at that point. But an NP2 of these isn't game tracking. It isn't like the worst thing in the world. It's just something that kind of feels bad. It's a very hard feeling to quantify until you've had it happen to you. Next is a water break, because I need some water. Alright, 23 minutes in. Making some time. Next is Koyenskaya. She's a part of the Assassin AoE Offensive NP, which features Cleopatra, coming back at you, Huanzhao, Shuten Doji, Semiramis, and Koyenskaya of Light. If you are summoning on this for Koyenskaya of Light, which I assume that's the reason you're going for it, it's a 1 in 5 with a 20% chance of going for him. Not bad odds, to be honest. What's the only main issue with this banner is if you fail to get Koyanskaya and you get instead Semiramis and Cleopatra, it's a really feel bad moment. Because at least with Huan Zhao, she's really good with Summer Scotty and can be used with Summer Scotty. So because her being quick, you at least go like, well, it's different from Buster. It's at least a quick unit. The same thing goes for Shuden Doji, where Shuden Doji is a little bit better in challenge quest type scenarios and is used with Castoria and some other type of units like that. So you can go like, okay, well, it wasn't a unit that you would go with Koyanskaya anyway. I'm perfectly happy or satisfied, depending on the player, obviously. Maybe there's someone out there who's just a super quick hater and doesn't want to deal with Huan Zhao. Fine, fair enough. Maybe this is the worst for you. But it feels worse when you have to go for Koyanskaya and you're going for her and you're trying for her and you're like, I want to get my girl Koyanskaya, and you get Semiramis and Cleo and you go, this would go great with my Koyanskaya if I had one. It's similar to what I said about the NP2 casters. It's just a really big feel bad, and it's no fault to the units. Cleopatra is kind of similar to Raiko, where you have to wait for her buff. I've had a video in the past where I talked about some of my negative feelings towards Cleopatra, and I talked it out with mainly because I really do like Cleopatra as a character. I like her design and everything about it. So I felt like her kit really needed a lot of help. And I had a talk with someone who was a big Cleo head who said, like, listen, man, I understand your feelings, but I think you're also underestimating Cleo. She can come in real clutch in some scenarios and can do a lot of damage. She just needs help by getting one of her skills buffed. And they did buff one of her skills, which is the Akin to Isis, which will let you have a buff success rate to make this 100% chance, which gives her 40% attack and defense, which is insane. Because when you get this back with Koyanskaya, you'll have 80% attack and defense for that singular turn, but still really good. And this will also let her get an MP charge, which will let her be used with double Koyanskaya and an Oberon type setup. And plus, this also does give you 10% NP back as well for 3 turns. Yes, so you could probably also use a similar structure of the double Koyan and a waiver, and then use a... what's the name of that CE? There's a 5-star CE that gives you 10% NP at the back. You know, there's ways around using her is what I'm trying to say, which makes it really good. So I can't wait for that buff, but that buff is also a decent size away. I don't mind waiting for it, but again, I do mention it because it's going to be a thing. In Japan, it hit August 5th, 2024, so that ain't coming to us till at least 2026, with very little chance of it getting moved up outside of 20. It will be like maybe a month early, but it will still be in 2026 at the end of the day. And Semiramis, from what I can remember, is also a pretty solid unit. It's just that these two just don't compare to Koyan, so it will feel really bad if you get them. But a 1 in 5 chance and a, let's see, if you combine these two, that's a 40% chance of getting the units that are just going to make you go, god damn, that's bad. So if you combine it with these two, it's a 60% chance of a 20% of just getting the unit that you actually want, a 60% chance of not getting that feeling, and then a 40% chance of getting one of these two. And obviously these numbers can also change depending on the person, where if maybe it's a person who goes like, whatever, man, I wanted that Cleo, so I'll be happy with her and I will continue to chase Koyan. Then I go, okay, then, you know, the numbers skew. That's why I'm just saying, I'm just giving out numbers here. Feel free to tell me how your numbers look like when I'm done with this. Because I do think it is different priorities for a lot of different people. You'll be surprised at the number of people who would like not summon on a good banner because of one specific thing on there where you're just like, nah, not because of them, I'm not doing it. It's surprising. So that's the Assassin AoE Offensive NP. We'll move on to the next one, which is going to be the one that features Summer Scotty, which is going to be the Extra Quick AoE Offensive NP, which has Karen, Summer Scotty, Dantes, Doman, Jacques de Molay, and Voyager. So, remember what I said about the Assassin AoE Offensive, where I'm like, well, two of these units, you're going to kind of feel bad because you're going to be like, well, these will go great the second I have Koyanskaya. This entire banner is kind of that, but that's only on face value, and it also kind of depends on some other stuff. Like, for example, if you had Van Gogh, Van Gogh works amazing with Domin, Jacques, and Voyager because they're all existence outside of the domain units. They're all quick units. For Domin specifically, he buffs evil and chaotic enemies, I believe. And that is exactly what Van Gogh is. So you can use them for some crazy crit damage. Voyager can also be used with Van Gogh for kind of similar purposes, even though he is not evil or chaotic. He's just a good little boy. And Jacques de Molay can also make everyone evil. So you can also have a little bit of use for that. I'm pretty sure that's what she does. Yes, grants the party evil alignment for everyone. So if you really wanted to make your Voyager an evil little boy, you could if you want. I don't know why you would do that. It seems like a kind of monstrous thing to do. So yeah, to get back to it. So it's really only, even though I do think Karen is good and so is Dantes, I do love my Dantes, and Karen is also very good from what I heard from when I got attacked by Karen fans. When I said, like, I don't know how good she is, and then someone said, like, actually, she's the greatest quick unit currently on AA, watch your fucking tone, and I said, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you, I was unaware, I'm sorry, and I still don't agree with that statement, because I actually think it's probably Rikyu now, but in terms of the extra ones that you see here, Domin is definitely a force to be reckoned with, but I also think it's probably because of extra bonuses on Domin's kit, like for example the pure ridiculousness of giving this much crit damage to someone who is evil and chaotic, and then also this much attack as well. It's very silly. Plus having an 80% NP charger, come on, give me a fucking break. Anyway, Summer Scotty is really good, and if you fail to get her on this banner, you're gonna have a lot of units that will be great with her the second you pull her. And it's a 1 in 6, so that's about a 16% chance of trying to get one of her. Not the greatest in the world, but as I've said many times before, it's technically better than the 1% chance you have when you pull on her banner for the first time with just a single multi and trying to get her multi-1. So that's this banner. I do think this is still a really good banner just because of how good they are. I guess this would probably be a little bit better if you're someone who was going for an MP2 Scotty. But at the same time, I don't think you would need to go for an MP2 Scotty. Actually, I could see someone going for MP2 Scotty, to be honest. It's funny because Scotty is similar to Koyan, can be used for being the AoE support unit while you're kind of waiting on stuff. I never do it with Koyan, but I actually have used Scotty Ruler, Summer Scotty. I don't know why I called her by her full government name. I've used Summer Scotty as the actual DPS on the team, and I've always been pretty happy with it. She does really good damage. I'm always surprised because I'm like, I thought rulers were supposed to do less damage, but maybe it's just my boy Ruler Moriarty down here, which I'll talk about later at a later time. But that's the extra quick AoE offensive NP. Next is the one that features Oberon. If you fail to get him, this is your chance to potentially try and get him again. It's the extra Buster AoE offensive NP1, which features Okita Altar. It features BB Summer. I'm going to stop saying it features because that adds like 2 seconds to the video. It features, god damn it, Summer Abbey, Koyanskaya of Darkness, and Oberon. So this is a 1 in 5 chance of getting Oberon. So that's about a 20% chance. Not too bad. But similar to kind of some of these other banners, the unit quality on this will really depend on a lot of factors on you. For example, I really do like Summer BB, and I like her entire gimmick, and I love her turn 3 being what it is, which is like a the ability to just lock down command cards and let you kind of just focus in on one unit and let them kind of dunk on a dude for 3 turns. I think is really cool. I've had a lot of fun with it over the years, and I think it's an amazing skill. But if you're someone who's also kind of fully built into Arc and believed in the NP5 Arc kind of meta, then unfortunately Summer BB is kind of like I don't really need a Moon Cancer, because I already have a Moon Cancer who's Buster who kind of goes that way. But if you're not someone who has that, I think BB Summer is a really good pull. Okita Altar has also been buffed to a really good amount that I think she's also pretty solid, only really held back by the fact that she's an alter ego and can have a little bit of a wonky in certain wonky setups, she can be a little bit tough to use. And I think the same could probably be said for BB Summer, because mine is NP2, but if I remember right, at NP1, unless you heavy invest going Golden Foe and giving level 100, she can have a little bit of a trouble actually dealing enough damage in some certain instances. Then we have Koyanskaya of Darkness, who I believe probably needs a buff. The only time I've ever heard someone talk about Koyanskaya of Darkness is when I asked my friend, how do you feel about your Koyanskaya of Darkness now? And he gave a real response of, I like Koyan, and I like looking at her, and when there are chances for me to use her, I use her, and I go, great. And then that's it. So it's not really... that reads to me like a unit that could probably use a little bit of buffs. It sounds like a unit that will probably get the job done, but then you also feel like, but you're not as strong as you could be. Could use a little bit of help in that regard. And then we have Summer Abby, who I think is one of the most hated SSRs on the NA side of the game, because I believe a lot of people think that she's really bad, like one of the worst units in the game. She has been buffed. From what I can remember, she has been buffed, because I have my actual Summer Abby. I don't remember if it's actually in the game yet, though. Summer Abigail, this came in 2023, so that would mean it's coming soon. It's coming for the anniversary. Yeah, this is a weird one, just because my experience using Summer Abby was I was expecting one of the worst units in the entire history of the game, and then when I use her, she's not, and it's really weird to put my feelings aside for that, to go like, why aren't you as bad as everyone says you are? I feel like this is definitely a unit that has been maybe made a boogeyman and said to be like, I want this unit to be better, which is different from I think this unit is bad. Because I really don't think that this unit is bad in any like conceivable way. With their ability to remove enemy debuffs, like I remember using her in a challenge quest, and she actually came in super clutch for these abilities that she had, like being able to remove buffs on a skill on NP is really nice. The reduction of defense can be pretty nice. A 50% NP gauge is also pretty nice. Being able to reduce their Buster resistance even further is really nice. The only thing that I would say is kind of a negative is the fact that this stun can kind of... sleep can be used as a stun. So you don't... But the way Abby uses it, you don't really use it as a stun. You use it as a way to deal 50% more... 50% more damage to them. So I could see that being a little bit of a... Oh, man. Not as good as I would have wanted it. But I don't know. I feel... Maybe it's just because so many people dunk on her. I just don't see it. I definitely think on this banner particularly... I think a lot of how much you care about getting Summer Abby is going to be dependent on if you get... is dependent on if you should summon on this, because I'm going to be honest, I think for a lot of players, if they're going for Oberon and they get Summer Abby, they're currently debating uninstalling the game. I think it's that dire. I've also learned that apparently a lot of people don't like Abby on the NA side, and I bring that up, and maybe it's just specifically the original Foreigner Abby. Because when that GSSR came out most recently on the NA that had a chance of getting Abby, I saw a couple people who were like, I'm so glad I didn't get Abby. And I'm like, that's weird. Sigurd's on that banner. I would have been happy to get Abby, but I don't know. It's weird because when I thought that, I was like, I guess people don't like Abby that much. But then Christmas Abby came out and everyone loves Christmas Abby. So I'm like, I don't know. Maybe people on NA are a little bit weird. I think that's the conclusion I've come to, is that there's a lot of bias out there. So, depending on your bias is dependent on if you're worth it. Because obviously, Oberon, if you get him, I haven't mentioned him because I already have a video talking about him, 100% worth it. A 20% chance at Oberon, I think is worth taking. But if the alternative is that if I get a 20% Abigail is enough to make you want to install the game, maybe look around, see. Flip a coin, see how your luck's doing before you summon on that banner. It seems like an extreme, but trust me, I've heard some people just get so mad at the GSSR that they debated quitting the game. And I'm just like, surely there were other choices. Were you really just that high on the gamblers go for that you were just like, I'm gonna risk everything? It's all or nothing. Who knows? Next, I'll talk about the other support units, which are going to be the other two banners on here, which should be very quick. On Rider Single Target Offensive NP, we have Artoria Pendragon, aka Summer. I mean, obviously, there's about like 7,000 Artoria Pendragons. It's Summer Rider Alter, and then we have Constantine, and then we have Reigns on here. Reigns is a support unit that's similar to Waver. She's also absolutely amazing. I wish I had Reigns. There was a time where I was debating on going on this banner because a 1 in 3 chance of Reigns is pretty good, but I already have the other two units, and I'm not really interested in trying to get them NP2 as well. She kind of functions similar to Waver, like I said, where she's able to give 50%, but also her buffs are a little bit different from hers, and she's able to kind of give a little bit more support in terms of her MP, because it's able to give like a reduction to defense, and then also ignores defensive class disadvantages for a turn. It gives overcharge. It increases MP generation rate that can come in pretty nice. She also has the, similar to Waver, defensive first skill, the ability to charge by 10%, the ability to charge one ally by 20%, increasing their attack by 40% while also reducing hers by 20%, and then this ability is also a nice 20% also. And because it's kind of like doled out, that can also be very nice with quick units, who sometimes you don't want the full 50 with a quick unit, you just want a couple little bit of NP here and there. So very nice unit to have, very much worth having. Now these other two units, it's debatable whether or not they're even worth having. So I have both of these units. I do love both of them as characters, but let's talk about, first we'll talk about Constantine. Eventually he does get a buff that makes him better, but I'll always remember the day that he was about to come out. I did a video where I said, oh man, I looked at his kit for the first time. I said, this guy seems great. I don't know. He seems really defensive focused. It seems it'd be very hard to kill him. It seems like that's his focus, is like keeping your Roman guys alive. And I think that's kind of a fun, neat little thing to do. And then after I released that video, I learned that apparently Constantine is considered one of the worst SSRs in the NA side of the game by a vast majority of the players. And I was like, really? Okay, I you know, alright, alright, maybe I was wrong. I don't think anyone ever called me out on my specific view on it, so I thank you for that, but I still think that he's pretty good in terms of a defensive unit, but I can also understand that maybe not a lot of people like the super hyper defensive units, but thankfully his NP does eventually get an upgrade that will let him give a little bit more in terms of support, in terms of attack, like increasing a further increase to party Buster performance, going from increases part. Yeah, it used to be that he increased his Buster performance for 3 turns. 2 Buster cards. Okay, fair enough. Maybe the people were right. Now he gives 30% to the party, while also giving invincibility for 1. That's right. Originally, all he did was give it to himself. Okay, I see where people were coming from. Never mind. And reducing allies' Roman damage by as well. So that's going to be a while before we get that interlude. They only just recently got it on JP, so that's a year and 6 months plus trying to get there from waiting. And then we have Summer Rider Alter here, who I think is a really cool unit in terms of design and look. Absolutely everything about this is great. Don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. I think she's awesome in terms of a person, in terms of look, in terms of everything. The thing that's not awesome is her kit. I think her kit probably needs a little bit of help. This is her NP, which is like deals damage to one enemy, charge out NP gauge by 10%, and then reduce critical attack chance. That ain't cutting it today in 2024. That's kind of crazy. Her second skill is interesting, but also needs a little bit, probably not, maybe this is not the skill to focus on. It's this skill right here. It's the third skill, increase on attack performance for 1 attack 3 turns, 30%. On a cooldown of 3. You read that correctly. Increase on quick performance for 1 attack 3 turns. Let me quickly go up here to a unit that released before she was in the game. Mana Burst, 500% chance to grant self a delayed buff for 1 turn. Increase on attack for 1 turn. After 1 turn, I'll just blanket 50% increase. This skill, I don't understand what they were cooking. I've never understood it. I've recorded this video at least, like I said, 30 times, and every single time I get to my girl and I get to this skill, I look at it and go like, I don't understand. I really don't understand. Who gives himself 30% quick for a single turn? That's enough for her Noble Phantasm, and then she like pieces out? I don't know. She needs help. So for that reason, now that being said, she's still a very popular unit, and there's plenty of people who will love her and use her regardless of how bad she is. There's nothing wrong with using a unit that you think needs help. Doesn't mean that you don't think that they still need help, but you know, you have to try a little bit harder compared to some of these other units who have it a little bit easier, for sure. But yeah, that's the Rider single target offensive NP. Probably not worth going for unless you really badly want Reigns or Rider Alter, in which case at least your chances are a little bit high. I don't know many people who would want Constantine, but there definitely are people that exist that would want Constantine. It just, it's hard to imagine going for Constantine when there's so many other units up available at the same time to have a chance for, but I'm not here to judge. I'm here to tell you about certain things. Next, I'll talk about the next banner. And we'll be getting pretty close to the end of talking about the supports and then going into the quick mode. Okay, it's Extra Support NP, which features Himiko, Sherlock Holmes, Shi Huandi, Bazette, Van Gogh, I was about to say Voyager, and Lady Avalon. This banner has actually technically 3 supports on it because it has actually 4 if you count Sherlock. Himiko I think is really good. She's I think good as a good alternative to Merlin if you don't have Merlin or you're not interested in using Merlin. She does not reach the same level of crazy crit damage, but she can support Buster with a lot of the stuff she does. I've done a lot of videos on using her and having fun with her and being able to use her at her full advantage, especially taking advantage of this where she increases her own attack or Buster performance for 3 turns and then makes it so she can really decimate demonic enemies. The problem with Himiko is that when I try and tell people how great Himiko is that the next thing they say is, great, now tell me the basic team that you would always use with her. The answer is there isn't really a really basic team that you always want to use her with. The one like that doesn't really exist. The best way to use her is to use her in a challenge quest or some very specific 90++ where she can take care of a single enemy and then allow your final... allow for a final push on turn 3. Like, that's the kind of unit she is. And for a lot of people, that's a lot more work than they're willing to put in, which I guess is fair enough, but I still think that she's an awesome unit to have, and a great one to have in your back pocket in case something comes up. Bazette is also a fantastic unit who's able to do the Fragger Rock counter. She has a very interesting design to her, and plus in the most upcoming Lost Belt, she decimates it. She's amazing. She's an MVP if you have her for it. Van Gogh, like I mentioned beforehand, has a specific buffer to existence outside of the domain, where she can give them, a single one can give 100% extra crit damage thanks to existence outside of the domain for 3 turns, and then also give them 50% crit damage depending on your MP level. If you have MP5, then that's 100%, so you're getting 200%. And then if you're using an ally who is NP1 and going with you, it's 150%. So let's say you have both of them NP1, that's 300% extra crit damage going to existence outside of the domain allies. Hilarious team to use. Absolutely hilarious to use. Plus she can be used with herself now thanks to Van Gogh Minor. And in the infinite wisdom of JP, they said, you know what, she deserves a buff. I'm like, okay, sure. I don't think she really needed it. I feel like that was just a calculated move to make me feel worse. And you know what, it worked. Next, we have, on the same notion, we have Lady Avalon. Now, Lady Avalon is nice because she isn't affected by the anti-Merlin agenda that Oberon has, because she's technically not a Merlin. She's called a Lady Avalon. She's pretending to not be Merlin, so she doesn't get to suffer the buff. At least that's the way I've justified it in my head. She's a really good... So it's really difficult in your head to go, how do I make a new art support that doesn't power creep Castoria? Because if you power creep Castoria, I think you'd have to shut the game down eventually, because what are you doing? Castoria is already one of the most broken units in the game. How do you make her better than her? And the answer is you don't. What you do is instead create a unit that does something that Castoria doesn't do, which is what a Lady Avalon does. So her kit kind of has more crit damage focused. It has a little bit more focus on giving some overcharge, which can actually run amazing with Castoria. I love using them together. And she has a little bit of a weird reduction of NP gauge that's very interesting and unique to her. And then her Noble Phantasm is a little bit more focused on being able to charge party NP gauge and then also gain crit stars from it. So like I said, very different from Castoria. Worth having. Can be used alongside her. Can't be really used for looping, but that's okay because what you want her for is a little bit more challenge quest focused stuff, or for some crit damage stuff on turn 3 after you use double Castoria, something like that. That's how I imagine her. And she's really good at it. She's absolutely amazing on it. Now, the last 2 units on here, which are the ones I'm going to be talking very quickly about, are Sherlock Holmes and Shi Huandi. And these 2 units, depending on how you feel about them, is whether or not this banner is worth it for. I think this banner is actually, man... And there is a part of me that wants to go for here to try and go for Van Gogh, now that I've kind of talked about myself. And if I miss, I get Bazette, and if I miss, I get an MP2 Himiko, which I'm not bad with, and I don't want an MP2 Lady Avalon. But the other bigger thing is that Shi Huandi and Sherlock are on this banner, and they have a playstyle that is defensive focused, and not one that I'm really the biggest fan of. Sherlock Holmes, not to say that they're bad, they're actually good. It just kind of comes down to, I think, preference at this point. Funny enough, Sherlock Holmes actually does have the ability to reduce enemies' defense, give them invincibility, and ignore defense, and they increase parties' crit damage. So maybe it's a little bit of a case. I don't know, maybe there's always been something that's weirdly felt off about their playstyle to me that I can't really put into words. They both kind of are similar in that they're rulers and that they're kind of going for it, and I feel like they're more for long battles. I think that's what it comes down to, is I think both of them are a little bit more focused on the long term of a battle, and that's never really been my style in most cases. Like, even when I use Himiko, who is a ruler similar, she's really more about giving all the buffs, but then Sherlock also does give crit damage. Maybe I just have weird biases that I need to look into. Because again, I don't think that either one of these are bad units. It's just like units that don't specifically call out to me. So for you, it might be completely different from me, and this could be perfect for you. I will say Shi Huandi is also one of the units on the list who has not received a buff in the longest. So either he's built perfectly as is, or they've been ignoring him. I'm not 100% sure. I do remember a lot of people saying that he was amazing in Challenge Quest, but I haven't really heard much about him in the year 2024. If you know a little bit more, please let me know, because again, because I don't have these units, and that's actually, if you have more experience with Sherlock, please let me know, because these are two units that I don't have, and I don't know what my feelings are, and I don't know when I would use them. And maybe this is a case of just like, I need to have a little bit more experience, but in order for that to happen, I actually have to have them. So maybe this goes up a little bit more. Maybe that's something to have a conversation offhand. I'll think. I have a decent amount of days left to think about it, at least. But it's funny how in the middle of the recording of this video, 51 minutes in, I'm like, actually, you know what? Maybe I could try for this at some point. Anyway, those are all the banners with the support units. So now I'm going to try to very quickly, fast as I can, talk about these other banners. Let's go down them. We have Saber Single Target Offensive NP. Before I do this, I should drink some water because we're going to be here. Saber Single Target Offensive NP, which features a 1 in 7 chance, which has Astolfo, Okita, Sigurd, Trung Sisters, Bride Nero, Benny Enma, and Musashi. A 1 in 7 chance of getting a single target saber of some kind. What I'll say is, I feel like none of these units are too crazy in terms of... No, that's not right, because I actually really do feel like Bride Nero is super crazy. I think a lot of these are actually very good units. I think the problem is that Sigurd's on here, and it kind of depending on how you feel about Sigurd, it would prevent you from summoning on this banner. Like, I would never summon on this banner just because it features Sigurd, even though I would love to have Musashi. I guess I would be down with an MP3 Benny Enma, a MP4 or 5 Bride Nero. I lost track of how many MP copies my Bride Nero is because I get them so randomly. The Trung Sisters at MP1 would be cool, Okita at MP1 would be cool, and so would Astolfo. So it kind of does come down to how much you care about Sigurd, and for me personally, I'm like not risking it, even though I'd be like, I would love to have any of the other units on here. But again, that's personal preference thing. And again, it has something to do with how the unit's built. I don't like his actual like kit and stuff like that. In terms of as a person, I love him. I think he's cool. I love his VA, same VA as Seto Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh! His design's cool. I like that he's a wife guy. I like his wife. I like his dedication to his wife. Cool dude in my book. But in terms of a unit, I think could be using a little bit more buffs, and I think they are going to eventually get to the point where they'll give him those buffs. But those are single target offensive NP. Next, we'll go on to Saber AoE offensive NP, which features Man Arthur, aka Man Saber, Ibuki Doji, Okita, Saber Okita. Saber Alter Okita, some of these names of these units, man, I swear to God. Charlemagne, Muramasa, and Void Shiki. 1 in 6 of getting any one of these units, and I don't really feel like there's anything that's bad on this banner. The one thing that's kind of a bummer is, like I've said multiple times in this video now, is that Prototype has a buff coming that is pretty nice. They'll let him be able to loop. But the problem is that it's far away. It's pretty damn far away. Because this happened in this one. And that comes in the 30 million downloads campaign, so that's a year and 6 months plus of waiting. And this third skill, without that buff, means that he can't actually do a traditional loop with double Koyanskaya and Oberon. And all you have is a one-turn super large damage increase. So shit, man. So bad. But after that buff, he gets significantly better because that one turn turns into 3 turns. So that means in turn 3, in some cases, you'll have a 200% damage against the super large enemies. Not bad at all. Saber Ibuki is the one that I like to use. For the most part, when it comes to a summer unit, you never really need an excuse to have a unit in a bikini, which is why I would like Saber Alter. But at the same time, she's a really good unit. I don't know why I expected to say that she was a bad unit, but she's not. She's good. Charlemagne, I like Charlemagne. He eventually gets a buff that also makes him better, and that's thankfully coming on, I believe, pretty soon. Let me see. This should be Chaldea Boys Collection 2024, so that should be, yep, that's coming up for us. Wait a minute, Chaldea Boys Collection 2024. No, that's far away from us. My brain is not working. Next, Muramasa. I talked about in a previous video that I thought he was really good, but then I also asked for some feedback from Muramasa fans about how they feeling about their boy right now. And from one of the Muramasa fans that answered back, he says, like, I still think that he's a super cool unit and that's super good, but also he's a little bit built to a lot like Shiro in that you have to put a lot of investment into him, and sometimes he'll just be barely able to do what he needs to do. He's someone that probably is going to need a buff somewhere down the line, and thankfully, because he is the protagonist of Fate Stay Night, or looks exactly like him and using his body, when they do plan to give him that buff, it's going to be a catastrophic buff, because Archer Emiya has gotten buffs since the beginning of the game and always seems to get them, and they're always insane, and that's on a 4-star. I can't imagine what they got cooking up for Muramasa when they'll be like, okay, let's get him back to Z tier. Let's get him back to the top real quick. And Void Chiki, I've talked about in multiple videos over the years of saying I think she's bad, but then at some point they reversed course and said, actually, that thing that was holding her back, we're removing it. So that's nice that it's on NA now. I actually wouldn't mind Void Chiki myself, but there's other banners on here that I would prefer a little bit more, so she doesn't. Maybe this is a good pick for my Select Destiny summon down the line. Something to think about, at least for me. So that's Saber AoE Offensive. Next we have the Archer Single Target Offensive NP, which features Summer Saber. We have James Moriarty, and then we have Super Orion, a 1 in 3, which is really good if you want to get either 1 of 3 of these units. Super Orion is another one of those units that's never gotten a buff because my boy was built crazy when he came out. Still one of the best crit damage dealers in the entire game. Don't be fooled by his Arts Noble Phantasm. This man is a gorilla through and through, and he can punch in his arm. His 1 crit damage from one of his busters can do more damage than some units could ever dream of on their NP. Absolutely worth trying for. And then we have Summer Saber, who is also an extremely good unit. I've used her throughout the years. She's old reliable whenever it looks like there's something. If there's something that I think Super Orion can't handle, I'll bring her in. And I prefer to use her on the fights that last a little bit longer than 3 turns, just because I know that she has a little bit more survivability built into her, what with her defense on her first skill, and then also having a little heal that comes at the cost of NP gauge charging, but because of the rate she gains it, sometimes I'm able to get full 300% overcharge after using her. Crazy. Yeah, that also says that mine is MP5, I know. Maybe a little bit of a biased view, but still, even at MP1, she was putting in the work for me. And then we have Moriarty, who I think is also a pretty decent unit, but is also probably the make or break it for a lot of people. Personally, for me, I would be happy with Moriarty. The reason I'm not summoning on this is because I'm not interested in an MP6 Summer Saber, actually, as much as I would like and maybe an MP2 Super Orion or a Moriarty. But for other people, it's usually the reverse of, like, maybe it's Moriarty is the thing that's holding you back, because you'd be like, oh man, I would love one of these two. But Moriarty is not on the same level as these two, and I don't know how I feel about that. But I still think Moriarty is a cool old man, and he has a cool outfit, so not the worst for some people. Just kind of depends on your biases, like I said all the time. Archer AoE Offensive NP is next. We have 4 units on it. We have Ishtar, we have Gilgamesh, we have Jean Archer, and then we have Sai. Not Sai, it's Say. These 3 are really good. in NA currently. Ishtar, A well-built unit, great for Buster. Same thing for Gilgamesh. He's gotten a little bit more buffs over the years, and he's actually getting one on NA pretty soon, so there should also be a banner with him coming up pretty soon. I don't think it was a banner. I think it was actually just... I don't remember. Point is that anytime it looks like Gilgamesh could be faltering a little, you'll always be thankful on the game, because they will gladly get him back to the level that he needs to be at. Jean is also one of those units who has also never received a buff, and I think it's probably because she was just built so solid. She's only gotten better since her release, funny enough. Because when she released originally, Castoria was not in the game yet, and she was already looping. And then when Castoria came out, she just got better at it. So, I don't know if they would ever think about buffing her, but I definitely don't think that she would ever really get one unless they just wanted to do one for the jokes. And then finally we have Sai, who currently on the NA game it's really hard to express it, because I was actually recently talking to this on someone on my Discord, where Sei is not a bad unit per se. It's just that when you use her, you realize how the shortcomings of her at times. Where if you're in the perfect scenario where you're using a 50% quick NP, that will allow you to get NP game on it, and then you're doing a whole bunch of other things. And you have Oberon, and you have Double Scotty, and you have her first three skills completely built up. Then you'll be able to loop just barely. But then you run into a node that has like really high HP, and then all of a sudden she starts to crumble, and you start to see things. It's one of those units who are on quick, who are like, hypothetically, yes, they can loop, but then also they're the easiest to kind of break down and be like, okay, well, actually, you need to have every single parameter perfect, or you can't really actually do the loop. Like, obviously, if you're doing a grind CE for the new event, and you actually don't have access to the 50%, well, then you need mana loading as well. And it's a very high investment for a unit that I think a lot of people would be, for the most part. It's like, why am I putting so much effort into a unit that is dealing like some pretty pitiful damage at the end of the day? But thankfully, eventually she gets a buff that makes her really good. I still feel like she needs a buff on her Noble Phantasm to make her just that much better, but that buff does go a long way. And plus, pretty soon we'll have Summer Chloe, which will allow her to be used with the Black Grail, which I have the crazy setup to justify using her with. Not everyone does, but at least it's kind of nice to be able to say, like, oh yeah, now she can at least have the damage. And all it requires was me to have the perfect storm of absolutely bullshit to go correctly for her. Next, say Lancer Single Target Offensive NP, which is this banner, and the next one are basically the how much do you want Melusine banners. So for this one, this is the best chance of getting Melusine, because it's a 1 in 4, which is 25% chance of getting Melusine. And if you miss her and you get one of the other ones, you got Skahawk, you got Tomomo no Ma Lancer, or Summer Tomomo, and Brunhilde. And Melusine is a great single targeter and a fantastic, one of the best loopers in the game. So the nice thing about summoning on this banner is that at least if you fail to get her here, then you'll get a really, really, really good single target Lancer, who is technically better at being a single target Lancer only because their skill 3 doesn't turn them into a looper. You see what I'm saying here? Not to say that, again, Melusine is bad, because she's not as a single target. It's just that the others have a full wider range of their kits. Wider range? Wider range. There we go. And they all kind of go interchangeable. I always put Skahawk at the top because she's my girl. She's been my girl since the first time I got her at the beginning of the game. But I've also seen some others put Brunhilde and Tomomo a little bit higher, just because Tomomo is anti-male and Brunhilde is also anti-male, but also a couple women. Just anyone that reminds her of Sigurd in some kind of fashion. So not a bad banner for sure. A pretty solid one, especially if you're trying to go for Melusine. This other one, which is Lancer AoE Offensive NP, which also features Melusine, but also instead features Ereshkigal, Sakamoto Ryoma, Britomart, and Romulus Quernus on it, is a 20% chance of getting Melusine, where I feel like if you fail to get her, I feel like you'll be a little bit more bummed out, just only because none of these other AoE Lancers really compare to her. At least 2 of them are in different cards, but they also kind of suffer from other things. Like Ryoma, for example, not bad by any kind of stretch of the imagination, actually very good, and I enjoy using mine. But he also kind of shares competition with a lot of Arts Lancers. There's plenty of Arts Lancers in the game, and a lot of them are also very popular characters, such as Melt, who is in there as Lamba. And Britomart also kind of suffers from that kind of similarly, where there's actually some of the actual best quick lancers, I think, in the game are actually 4 stars. So it's kind of a little bit of a bummer when your 4 or 5 star is not as good as them. Plus, she has a little bit of more of a niche. Unfortunate. And with Fierce Kagol and Romulus Quernus, both of them are absolutely. My voice is failing me as we get further into this video. Both of them are absolutely great units. The problem is that they're not Melusane, so even if they are really good, they don't compare to her in terms of damage, which, still, you know, you don't get the best, but you still get at least someone who is worthy of looping. It's a little bit weird just because it's like, oh yeah, Melusane's the best at it, but also she overkills about, like, 80% of all fights. So, if the other ones are like, oh yeah, you get like 50% less overkill, then it's like, well, it's okay then. It's just in the grander scheme of things of how much do you care about the numbers going higher. And thankfully for a lot of people, Rish Kagol got that win and smile, so they're happy to have her. And Romulus Quernus reminds them of Saint Seiya, which is perfectly good. Boom. You love to see it. So that's Lancer AoE Offensive NP. And next we have the Rider AoE Offensive NP, which features Ivan, it features Iskandar, it features Bakken, and it features Da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci, the writer version, obviously. Another good banner. I'll say that with units, but I'll give one caveat in that Leonardo da Vinci, I can now fully say, has been power crept, because Louis came out, and I feel like, okay, now we're at the point where I'm like, all the cool things that Da Vinci had access to her has just been completely taken over by other units now. She needs a buff of some kind, which is kind of a bummer. Still usable, but just not on the top of the game like she was at one point, but not anymore. Bakken is also a really cool quick rider AoE. Iskandar, similar to a lot of other units I've mentioned, eventually gets a buff that makes him really good. Because this will let him be able to be loop with double Koyanskaya and an Oberon, which is really nice, but this is also a ways away, as you can see here. It released on Servant Strengthening Quest whatever, which was in 2024, and so that's another one that's a ways away. And Ivan the Terrible is voiced by Kiryu Kazuma, so all 4 of these units are really good. It just feels like there's other banners likely with that features a little bit higher priority, but I wouldn't actually personally be too sad about getting any of these just because I'm a big fan of all of them. Next, Caster AoE Offensive NP, which features Summer Nero, which is the unit that I think has gone the longest without getting a single buff, but that's because they released her cracked. It's insane how good she is compared to Summer Alter. It's kind of crazy. Murasaki Shikabue and Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci also probably being the weakest of them on here, but I really like Murasaki Shikabue, like what she does kind of as an AoE servant. The only bummer about Leonardo da Vinci is that she is also similarly a Arts AoE. I don't know why my brain is blanking on me. She's also an AoE Arts unit. And so that means she also has to compete with Murasaki Shikabue and Shirazade, and I just personally like Murasaki Shikabue and Shirazade more. And Summer Nero is a Buster unit, so she doesn't really have to compete with anyone, and it's a good thing because she's absolutely amazing at what she does. So it's either her or Caster Ku are your like 2 go-tos when it comes to Caster AoE Buster units. But similar to what I said about single targets, not everyone is a big fan of the AoE casters. As you can tell, I actually am. So I pointed at myself at that one, but you didn't see that. So even though a 1 in 3 is a pretty good shot at getting any of these, it also kind of depends on if you're actually looking for a caster AoE. Next, an Assassin Single Target Offensive, which features Kama. It features Mysterious Heroine X and then King Asan. Kama is another one of those units that's never gotten a buff, but that's also because she was solid on release, and anytime I've used her, I've always been, thank you for killing that. Thank you for killing that dude for me. Thank you for killing that rider for me, Kama. I'll see you next time there is a single rider-focused boss to bring you out once again to fight them. Mysterious Heroine X is an anti-Artoria face, but also she also has the added benefit of being really coolly designed and the start of the Servant First thing that came over to FGO. She's the whole reason for it, so of course she has the fact that she's an extremely popular unit that many people would be happy to have. Then we have King Hassan, who's a big skeleton with a giant-ass sword, one of the coolest dudes in the entire game, one of the best designed dudes in the entire game, and if you are someone who does not like King Hassan, I am not interested in knowing your opinions at all. Next, we'll go into Berserker Single Target Offensive as we go to Kintoki, Mysterious Heroine X Alter, and Hijikata, which is another 1 in 3. One that is a little bit tougher to recommend just because it kind of depends on Hijikata. Me and my brother most recently did a video where we actually had a video where we got to use Hijikata in our challenge quest. Because in the past, I've talked about how I don't really like Hijikata and his design. But then someone said, I think you have to give him another shot and you have to really play the game in his playstyle to truly, fully appreciate what he brings to it. And yeah, that fight we had where we actually were using him to the way that he was supposed to be built, it was an awesome fight. It wasn't like the easiest fight in the world, but it was also very fun to actually do, like an additional challenge as you were trying to play the game, but then also trying to play a secondary game on top of it as you try to play in your own fight style. So I think it ends up making Hijikata a really cool unit that is fun to use. But it also is person to person. You have to dedicate the team to kind of focusing around that gimmick because you can't just use him as a generic one because you won't be taking advantage of his fully built-in systems of wanting to be his HP as low as possible. Now, thankfully, the other two units are not built like that. Kintoki is just really good at dealing a fuck ton of damage whenever you need to, and Mysterious Heroine X Alter is also very good at dealing a fuck ton of units, specifically to Saber class. So both of them are great at that. So if you are probably looking for a unit that can do all that, then this is probably a pretty good banner for you. And if you're looking into trying out Hijikata's playstyle, then there you go. Either you're looking to try out Hijikata's playstyle or you're a big fan of Gintama or the Shinsengumi in general. Next, the extra single target offensive NP, which features Jolter. It features Kagekiyo, Super Bunyan, Melt, Abby, and Young Defoy. A 1 in 6 to get any of the units on here, so if you're trying to get one specific one, aka Jolter or Melt, you're out of luck. You're just as likely to get one of the other ones, so probably not worth it for that. It's a heavy bag. Jolter has most recently, I think, gotten a animation update that was released early on NA, which is pretty cool, and she's also has a buff of hers coming up pretty soon, I think. I don't remember if they released that early with her. Kagekiyo is a really good last unit standing for quick that can sometimes be a little bit greedy with her design at times because it really feels like at times that you want to fully build it to her if you want to actually take full advantage of her. But as a last unit standing unit, she's really solid at it. Super Bunyan, I think, is probably the... Actually, that's an... yeah, actually. So on the NA side, I think a lot of people agree that Super Bunyan is a little bit on the weak side and needs some help. But it's disagreeable because on the JP side, they disagree. They actually, most recently, when they did that buff, they gave Super Bunyan some more attack on her NP and 20 crit stars. Everyone else was saying, what is this dumb buff? Why would you give this? On the JP side, there was a lot of people who were actually saying, why would you buff one of the best units in the game like this? Why would you make her strong? Tier 0 Abigail, Tier 0 Super Bunyan? And apparently to them, because Super Bunyan has a 3-second NP, she's one of the best farming units in the game. If you super highly invest into her to make sure that she can always kill to a crazy amount, the amount of time saved while grinding makes her one of the best units in the game, which is a very funny stance to take. I'm definitely someone who says, like, I think you should make her actually as a better unit, but it's also, I've also tried to use her as, like, a 3-second quick unit, and I can kind of see where they're coming from, as of, like, man, your time really does go super quick when you slap the black rail on Super Bunyan and say, just kill the thing at the end, and you're done in 3 seconds. You're like, man, I saved so much time on that MP animation. Next, Melt most recently got a buff on JP that is insanely good. It's going to take a while for us to get it there, but that buff turned her from insanely good. She was already good. She just took her to the next level of really insane. So she's still good on the NA side. You just have to look forward to that NP buff eventually that will let her remove buffs on NP first before, and then deal damage. Abigail Williams, like I said, I think I've heard some people say that she needs a little bit more attack to her because she's a little bit weak, especially as the game has gone on. So she needs a little bit help in the attack department, and plus it sounds like a lot, like I said, maybe I'm just being gaslight by a couple people that I saw that didn't like Abby, but apparently it's maybe a larger thing here, that there's enough people out there that just seeing Abigail is enough to make them not want to summon. And then Yang, I think, is a really cool unit. I like using her as a taunt unit. She's a taunt unit, but also she's a little bit more on the offensive side, so it's a little bit different from some of the taunt units that are used for Defensive options, she's a little bit more aggro than that, especially with the ability of hers to come quickly take down anyone with burning. Makes her a really cool unit. A lot of the times whenever we use her in a challenge quest, she comes in super clutch and is the reason why we're even able to win a lot of the time. So don't underestimate her just by the look of her kit and stuff like that. Next, we have the extra Arts AoE Offensive NP, which features Young Moriarty, Summer Kama, Space Ishtar, Kiara, Summer Kiara, and Hokusai. A 1 in 6 chance of getting any one of these units, which, to be fair, isn't the best of getting a singular unit, but if you actually just looked away from Summer Moriarty, there's a lot of good collection of girls on this banner. A lot of ones that you'd be like, I would love to have any one of these, because they're typically fan favorites of some kind. With their only really huge negative being that they don't compare to Summer Ibuki. So as long as you're okay with that, then it's okay. And trust me, I've heard plenty of people tell me their opinions about, like, whatever, man, I hate the way Summer Ibuki looks. And so I'll keep using the units that I use now, and I say, well, that doesn't bother me because I think she looks beautiful. So, why am I harbinging bad feelings about this? So I think for that reason alone, having so many like servants on it is a good enough as a generic. You know what? I just want a win here somewhere, man. I love Kama. I love Ishtar. I love Rin. I love Sakura. I need to give it a shot. And plus, if I miss, I'll get the weird horny nun or the Little Mermaid or Hokusai. I'll get Ina Miss from Hololive. I completely butchered her name. The problem here, though, is this also comes down to, similar to the other banner where I mentioned Moriarty, how do you feel about young Morty over here? And the answer is, if you hate him, then the gods of Gacha will decide that this is the guy that you're going to get from this banner. Thankfully, me and my brother absolutely love young Moriarty. But I've also seen, I think, a couple people here and there say, like, why'd they make him so weak? Why is he like this? I'm like, you just don't understand it, man. He's really cool. Even though he does suffer a little bit at MP1 because he's a ruler. You know, there's nothing you can do about that. But still, that's this banner. And now we'll go on to the final banner, finally. Extra Buster AoE Offensive NP2. Because, of course, there was enough Buster dudes to make 2 complete banners from it. And this one features Makasu Shiro. It features Summer Ruler. It features Demon King Nobunaga, King Protea, and Archetype Earth. And this is a pretty weak banner overall. And it's just because it's unfortunate because of my girl, Summer Ruler. I used to always stand by my girl because she has a very unique skill here in Royal Card, but unfortunately this ability to deal 5 new command cards has been given to a unit with a much better kit. So it unfortunately means that she's not as good as the one. She was already not very good because her attack is on a delay. And it's like a 30% attack increase. Her NP increase is 40%. So you already have to use mana loading to make up for the fact that you don't have a 50% NP gauger up. And then, oh man, it's just a bummer to look at. The only thing she really had, she even does get a little bit of this buff right here, which I don't remember if it's coming. Yeah, this already came, man. No, wait. It's coming pretty soon, but it's not enough. I remember thinking, like, it's a perfectly okay buff. It's better, obviously better than what she had previously, which was just a 40% attack increase, because now it's 40% plus some Buster performance, which helps her with her damage. But the fact that this was like her one unique skill and they gave it to someone else and that unit is just so much better, it's hard. Like, maybe one day when they finally buff this skill, my girl will be free to be just called good by default. But as it is right now, unless you're a big fan of her arts, which I am, I really do like her. This is why I still use her, because I'm a big fan of all of her art. Absolutely, every single one of them. I think all these designs are great. I love my bunny ruler. Oops, I just deleted that. One moment. Be fine. So that banner kind of comes down to how much do you care about this one, because it's going to be the bummer on it. And in terms of the other units, there are some good units on here. I don't know enough about Shiro to make a full statement, so it kind of, I guess, depends on how much you care about Amaterasu to know if you're going to be summoning on him, because I think he probably suffers from the same thing a lot of rulers have, which is that they don't do enough damage. But feel free to tell me if something has changed. I remember he was pretty good for a certain amount of time, but I'm not sure of it at the moment. So if you know about him and you made it this far, please tell me. Demon King Nobunaga has gotten so much buffs that at some point she has to be good. I refuse to believe a unit that has gotten as much buffs as she has gotten, and also has gotten a 1-star brother that is whose main goal is to support her and then kill himself. I refuse to believe a unit like that is bad. So at the very base level, she's good. King Protea is also gotten a buff pretty recently, making her much better. And Archetype Earth, the only thing I'll say is that at MP5, she's absolutely cracked amazing, but at MP1, you need to build her up to a significant degree if you're going to be wanting to get the most damage out of her, and even then, she needs a little bit of help, for sure. It's a little bit safer to have her at MP2 or at MP3. At MP1, you're a little bit suffering, but I think that might change just a little bit when we finally get the final append, which will let us have access to Oberon. Because you can't currently, on the NA side, use her with Oberon because you need to have two coin Skayas. Plus using her skill on turn 1 will mean that you'll have it on a single turn on turn 3, and she doesn't have a 30% NP charger, so there's no way to use Oberon. So what you have to instead do is bring in another unit and kind of bring her down. So that's kind of unfortunate, but with the append charge, you can just make it so she append charges herself, so now it's actually open, and you can free up that final slot that you don't have to use to bring in Summer Ibuki to give her a buff to also lower her skill cooldowns by 1. You can then just use it to bring in Oberon, and he can use his 3rd skill because she's a Buster unit, and that will help her immensely with damage. But that's all theoretical stuff, and that is the final banner. And also, maybe for some people it doesn't matter because it's Arc, and that's good enough. Fair enough. And finally, we reached the end of the GSSR, and for reals this time, this video is coming out. Thank God. It ended up being almost an hour and 30 minutes long. I really do think that for the halfway point, I'm probably going to take a little bit of feedback a couple days from now where I'm going to say, like, in a post, hey, how do you feel about the structure of the GSSR? Would it be okay for it to be separate videos? Or would you prefer it if I just had one long video and then maybe I start doing a little bit more of it edited? Because I feel like the main problem that I'm running into is that there's a lot of units and I do want to talk about all of them. I don't just want to talk about the big ones. I want to try and give a view of all of them, but it can be very tough, and it results in videos like this where it's an hour and 20 minutes long. But you know what? It's fine as long as it hopefully helps someone, and I really do hope it hopefully helps you of some kind. Feel free to tell me which banners you're looking forward to. If there's anything in this video that you want to talk about, comment on, or even tell me a little bit more about the specific units you like that I maybe brushed over too quickly, feel free to tell me. I think for the most part it's pretty simple, because GSSR is really where a lot of people will either go for, like I said, a big meta damage dealing unit, or they'll go for a support, and then the truly dedicated go for the unit that they like the most. And thankfully for some people, they kind of mix in with the others, you know what I mean? So yeah, remember to leave a comment, like, and subscribe, especially if you made it this far. I thank you guys very much. And now hopefully I can start working on the other videos I promised to make in December. Until next time, live reaction, did they update the news to say that Koyanskaya was coming out? They did it! I'll see you guys in the next video. Until next time, peace out.